The wind came down from the hills like a warning that evening, dry and sharp, rattling the boards of the old ranch house as if it carried news no one wanted to hear. Silas Crow had lived alone on that land for nearly a decade, long enough for silence to become a companion, long enough for regret to harden into routine. He was a man carved by dust and duty, broad-shouldered, quiet, known across 3 counties as someone who kept his word and his distance. So when the knock came at his door, soft, uncertain, almost swallowed by the wind, he did not rise at first. Then it came again. Silas opened the door to find a woman standing on his porch, pale beneath a wide-brimmed hat, her coat too thin for the cold, her eyes burning with something far deeper than fear. She swayed, one hand gripping the post as if the earth itself might slip away. "I've been aching down there," she said suddenly, the words tumbling out raw and unguarded. Not lewd, not teasing, just desperate. Silas froze, not because of what she said, but because of how she said it. Like someone confessing pain they'd carried too long, like someone who had run out of places to go. Her name was Clara Mae Whitfield, a widow from the Eastern Trail towns. Word had reached him weeks ago about a woman turned away from doctors, dismissed by men who heard only scandal where there was suffering. A woman whispered about in saloons by men who had never once asked if she was all right. Silas stepped aside without a word. Inside, the lamplight revealed the truth no rumor ever could. Exhaustion etched into her face, hands trembling, pride barely holding her upright. This was not a woman seeking sin. This was a woman seeking relief, dignity, and perhaps forgiveness, from herself most of all. She told him everything in broken sentences, about the pain, about the shame, about how every door closed the moment she spoke honestly. In the Wild West, a woman's suffering was often misunderstood, or worse, exploited. Silas listened. He always listened. And when she finally fell silent, tears tracking down her cheeks, he did something no one expected. He knelt, not in desire, but in respect, and said, "You don't owe me anything, but you're safe here." Outside, the wind howled louder, as if the world itself sensed that something irreversible had begun. Before the chapter ends, invite viewers gently. If you believe stories of the Old West still matter, stories of honor, restraint, and choices that shape lives, subscribe now. This is only the beginning. Morning came slowly, light spilling over the plains like mercy. Clara awoke on the couch, a blanket carefully tucked around her shoulders. No hands had touched her. No price had been demanded, and somehow that made her chest ache more than the pain ever had. Silas was already outside mending a fence, working as though the night hadn't changed anything. But it had. When she joined him, the air between them was heavy with unsaid things. She apologized for the words, for the trouble, for existing in a world that didn't know what to do with her honesty. Silas shook his head. "This land teaches you something," he said. "Pain ignored only grows louder." What followed was not scandal, but choice. Silas rode with her to town, stood beside her in front of men who smirked and judged, and did the truly unthinkable for that era. He spoke for her, not over her. He demanded care. He demanded decency. And when they laughed, he offered his name, his land, and his reputation as collateral. By sundown, everything had changed. Not because of desire, but because one man refused to look away. Clara's pain did not vanish overnight. Healing never does, but dignity returned first. And sometimes, that's what truly saves a person. The story closes not with passion, but with promise. 2 people standing on a porch at dusk, the future uncertain but no longer alone. News traveled faster than horses in the West, and always dirtier. By the time Silas and Clara returned to the ranch, whispers had already taken shape in the town they left behind. A widowed woman, a solitary rancher. Men filled in the blanks with cruelty where truth never stood a chance. Clara felt it first, the way merchants avoided her eyes, the way conversation stopped when she entered a room. Pain could be endured. But being turned into a story you never agreed to be part of, that cut deeper. Silas noticed everything. He always did. One afternoon, he rode into town alone and walked straight into the saloon where the loudest lies were being told. The piano stopped. Glasses paused mid-air. Silas didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "She's under my protection," he said. "Any man with something to say can say it to me." No one did. That night, Clara realized something terrifying and beautiful. For the first time since her suffering began, someone had chosen her publicly. Before this chapter ends, let the narrator say, "If you believe real strength is quiet, but unbreakable, subscribe now." This story is only tightening its grip. Clara tried to leave. She packed at dawn, believing she had already cost Silas too much. His reputation, his peace, his solitude. The ranch had become a refuge. And refugees are dangerous places for people who are used to running. Silas found her at the gate. "You think you're a burden," he said calmly. "But you're wrong." He didn't speak of love. He didn't speak of desire. Instead, he made a promise that stunned her more than any confession ever could. "I'll marry you." The words hung in the air like thunder without rain, not because he wanted to possess her, but because the world wouldn't leave her alone. Marriage in the Wild West was protection, status, shield. Clara shook her head. "I can't give you what people expect from a wife." Silas met her gaze. "I'm not marrying expectations." That was the unthinkable thing, offering commitment without demand. The wedding was small. No celebration. No romance songs. Just witnesses and truth spoken plainly. "You may kiss the bride," the preacher said. Silas didn't move. Instead, he took Clara's hand and whispered, "Only if you want." She nodded, once. That single, respectful gesture changed everything. They shared a house, but not a bed. Shared meals, but not assumptions. At night, Clara lay awake listening to the sounds of the ranch, realizing safety felt strangely heavier than fear. And Silas, who had buried his own losses years ago, found himself, battling something new, wanting, but refusing to take. This chapter should close with tension, not touch. Weeks passed. Care helped. Time softened pain, though scars lingered in ways no doctor could see. Clara began to laugh again, quietly at first. She helped on the ranch, stood taller in town, spoke without shaking. Healing didn't erase her past, but it gave her ground to stand on. One night during a storm, fear returned. Old memories, old pain. She knocked on Silas's door. "I'm scared," she admitted. He sat with her until morning. No crossing lines, no breaking trust, and that restraint, more than any act, rewrote what intimacy meant to her. The aching she once spoke of had changed. It was no longer pain. It was longing mixed with safety, and that terrified her more than anything before. Spring arrived like forgiveness. On a quiet evening, Clara stood on the porch watching Silas work. She realized something undeniable. He had already given her everything, without ever asking. This time she spoke first. "I'm not broken," she said. "I was just unheard." Silas looked up, and for the first time the choice was hers, not driven by pain, fear, or survival, but by trust. The story doesn't end with scandal. It ends with consent, patience, and a future earned, not taken. If you want Wild West stories where love is chosen, not forced, subscribe now. More powerful stories are waiting. Peace never lasts long on open land. A rider arrived one afternoon carrying dust, arrogance, and an old name Clara hoped never to hear again. Ezekiel Moore, a former acquaintance from her past, a man who once mistook her suffering for weakness. He didn't come for conversation. He came for claim. "I heard you found yourself a protector," Ezekiel sneered, eyeing Silas's land. "Funny how a woman like you always needs one." Silas stepped between them, not angry, not loud, just immovable. "She's my wife," he said. Ezekiel laughed. "Then you should ask her what she still owes." That night Clara shook, not from fear of Ezekiel, but from the old lie trying to crawl back into her bones, that her pain made her less worthy. Silas didn't chase Ezekiel. He stayed with Clara. And sometimes that's the braver fight. Ezekiel didn't leave town. She confronted Silas, voice breaking. "You didn't sign up for this." Silas answered without hesitation. "I signed up the moment I opened that door." But the weight was heavy. Marriage had protected her, but now it threatened him. Clara realized something painful and powerful. Love isn't proven when it's easy. It's proven when walking away would be simpler. She made a decision that would either break them or bind them forever. Clara went to town alone. She faced Ezekiel in public, spoke clearly. and told the truth, not loudly, not angrily, but without apology. She named her pain, named the lies, named the men who confused silence with consent. The town listened. Some looked away. Some felt shame. And some finally understood. When she returned to the ranch, Silas was waiting. This time, when she stepped close, it wasn't out of fear or need. "I choose you," she said. "Not because I have nowhere else to go, but because I want to stay." Silas didn't rush, didn't assume, didn't take. He asked the only question that mattered. "Are you ready?" And that, more than anything else, proved what kind of man he was. And on a slow, emotional fade, if you believe the strongest love stories are built on choice, respect, and courage, subscribe now. More unforgettable Wild West stories are coming.